Thank you so much for joining. I'm just giving a few minutes for people to get it settled. Welcome to Financial Literacy in Canada. I'm really excited to be your host today. I'm just letting in a few more people, so bear with me. In the meantime, I would really love to invite you to please introduce yourself in the chat to your fellow colleagues and newcomers, international students from across the country. Please feel free to put your name, your school, and maybe what you're looking to learn today. What is your learning goals or questions that you have? And my name is Sischa Maharaj. I'll be your host today on behalf of Devant. And just a little bit of housekeeping. This is a meeting, so you can show your video if you feel comfortable. I'm also going to ask if you can mute yourselves, and we will have lots of opportunities for discussion. So a little bit about me. You can see my background here in the presentation. I work with Devant as a senior consultant, and my main role is to work with universities and colleges to increase student engagement using AI and technology through our Devant platform, but at the same time, helping to increase student engagement, specifically with connecting our students and international students with employers. But before I started in higher education, I actually have a background in financial services. My first role out of my graduate degree, which is in business, was working for financial services. So I have over 20 years working in financial services, and my passion is really being able to offer international students and newcomers to Canada a concierge service. When you come to Canada, to have an amazing experience, have you settled, have you find your first job, but also helping you to build your financial literacy to the point where not only are you getting a job, but you're able to save enough to buy your first home, to become, investment advisors, or to build your investment portfolio if that's what you're interested in doing, as well as really helping you to develop your economic prosperity in Canada. I am also a licensed mortgage agent, and I work with lots of clients who are looking to do this across Ontario. And just a little story I wanted to share with you why I'm so passionate about financial literacy and this topic, in particular. My first role in financial services, I did a lot of work with clients. And in 1 week, I met two very interesting clients. The first client that I met was a doctor. And the doctor came in looking for a line of credit and some financial services on the credit side. But when I assessed the client, who was a doctor, he actually had the triple the amount of his income in debt, versus another client that came in who only made about $27,000. And that client actually had in her savings $32,000. And that really made me really curious and also very passionate about how is it that someone who's a doctor that, makes over 200,000 have more than his income in debt versus someone else who just made a little bit over $27,000, and she actually saved almost more than her income in savings. So because of this experience, I really invested in financial literacy and wanting to help my clients to build their financial portfolio further. So today, I am really excited to share with you some of these tips, some of these strategies, and to answer any questions you have around financial literacy. So before we begin, just some housekeeping. Just take a look at the slide there. Just want to make sure you're on mute, that your video, also, as I said, I would love to see you, love to see your questions. So if you're comfortable, please leave your video on. This session is recorded, and part of the reason is that we will be able to send this recording to you afterwards so that you have it as a reference for yourself as well. And later on, I'll share with you some of the other upcoming events that we are offering. So this session is being hosted by Devant. So as I mentioned, at Devant, we support over 48,000 job seekers, mostly newcomers to Canada and international students. We host over 500 live events on a weekly basis, and we offer direct connections to employers. We actually offer 2 Get Hired at Home events, as well as an alumni event to help you build your connections with employers and to help you get hired. Okay, so these session, as I said, is about financial basics. And oops, people are still joining, so I'm just going to continue to admit people. So as we do that, I'm just going to start a poll, a quick poll. Would love to hear from you about how did you hear about this event? So if you don't mind taking a few minutes to answer the poll, it's always good for us to know how we can reach students. We had over 100 students and international students and newcomers sign up for this session, and we're always looking to do better and to connect with our candidates and our clients in the best way. So would love to hear from you. How did you hear about this event? Thank you so much for answering. So it looks like the Devant newsletter, your school, and the Devant school portal. Wonderful. Thank you so much. If you want to just answer, if you haven't yet, I'd love to hear from you. Wonderful. So mostly Devant newsletter. Wonderful. Glad to hear that that is working. I'm just going to share the results so you can see. Thank you so much for participating in the poll. Okay, so let's get right to it. So this session, we're going to start off with financial basics. We will be offering multiple sessions, and each session will build on the other so that you get more and more advanced information about financial literacy and money management, which we've heard from our alumni from the Career Launch Conference that this is very, very important. So here are some of the benefits of managing your finances. Number one is controlling your financial future, achieving your life goals, providing for yourself and your family, being a smarter consumer. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that, being a consumer in Canada, reducing your stress, sleeping better, and being confident that you can manage your finances. Someone else in the waiting room. Bear with me. Letting them in. Great. Wonderful. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about your financial future. And we're going to talk a little bit about budgeting, okay? So I know that this is something that we all try to do, and it's sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But I just want to give you some of the basics so we all have the same language, and you can move up from there in terms of your advanced knowledge in budgeting. So some of the major parts of budgeting include what's your income, so money that's coming in, versus expenses, money that's coming out. And the difference between your income and expenses is a surplus or a deficit. So here are some tips of what you can do to manage your budgeting process a little bit better, okay? Knowing what you spend is the first step. So some of the tips that you can use would be keeping every receipt so you have an idea of where your money is going, reviewing your bank and your credit card statements, making a list of irregular expenses. So with irregular expenses, some of the things that are really important to do here would be looking at gifts, donations, home repairs, vacations, maybe some other expenses at school, taking a look at your tuition receipts, taking a look at your other expenses that you are not sure of where you were spending the money. And it's a good way for you to take a look at this information on your bank statements, your credit card statements, and your receipts, as I mentioned, for cash. You also have online purchases. So if you have Apple Pay, Google Pay, if you do Interact, you can actually click within the bank Interact system to see where to do e-transfer money to, and making a note on a regular basis. So step number one is knowing what you spend. Total all of your expenses at the end of the month and do this for at least 3 months. It'll be very, very helpful for you in terms of understanding how you can build on this. In terms of your monthly income, here is an example of some of your fixed monthly income expenses. So what you want to do is take a look at what are my income versus expenses. So let's start with income. So if you have a part-time income, if you have scholarships or bursaries, you have gifts that are coming in, or you have other forms of income, if you are doing YouTubing, or you have online income, if you're doing buying and selling online, wherever your income is coming, whether that's within an employer, within the school, with work study, for example, or your own entrepreneurial ventures, you want to make a list of what are all my sources of income first. Step number 2 is taking a look at your fixed income or your fixed expenses. So here are some of the areas for fixed expenses. I added on here as well, tuition, books, immigration fees, and costs as well. So please put in the chat, what are some of the other expenses that are fixed here for you in Canada that maybe may not be listed? Please feel free to put them in the chat. Next, we're going to take a look at some other expenses. These are expenses that are variable or irregular expenses. So things like grocery, eating out, household expenses, your computer, so software, hardware, supplies. If you have pets, I'm not going to go through all of the lists, but you can take a look here at some variable expenses. So as I'm going through, I would recommend that you have a note paper where you can actually take some notes for yourself of what are some of your fixed expenses and what are some of your variable or irregular expenses. Okay, now what you want to do is you want to subtract your income minus your expenses to see if you have more income or you have a deficit, which means you have more expenses. Okay. So let me give you some tips on managing your cost of living. So this is really important. I'm hoping that you're going to get a lot of tips here. So did you know that 40% of Canadians feel like they're just financially getting by? So here I'm going to share with you some areas for saving. I'm going to stop here for a second. I'm going to ask you, what would you do if you could spend your time freely and you didn't have to worry about money? Please put that into the chat. Shamir, thank you so much. I see that you would travel more. Any others? Jagadish, thank you. Yes, you want to pay off your debt. Wonderful. Thank you. The pauses are I'm letting people into the chat, into the webinar who are still joining us. So bear with me. Wonderful. So here are some suggestions. Thank you for sharing some of the things you would do if you didn't have to worry about money. How would you spend your time? What would you like to invest in or purchase if you didn't have to worry about money? Thank you. Please keep coming, keep sharing those in the chat. So here are some other suggestions for you of how you can save some money. So this is how you can negotiate better plans. So call each of your service providers, your cell phone provider, your utilities, anything that you have monthly bills, and you can ask them, how can I cut back on my monthly bills? Can I save money? So for example, for some hydro or electricity, there are peak times and there are low times. Am I on any current plans? So take a look at your phone bills. Are you getting billed by the second? Could you save some money? Do you have perks? Sometimes, with your student union or with the school or with your employer, they may have telecommunication plans or perks for you that you can take advantage. You can ask them, do you have a better plan or deal for me? If so, what's the time frame? You talk about a contract. If you are on a contract, if they have any other options for you, can you bundle services to save money? And how can you avoid interest and late payment penalties? These are just some ideas. Here are also some ideas on how to reduce banking costs. So when you take a look at your banking fees, you want to take a look at all your fees. You want to take a look at your monthly costs. You want to take a look at your per transaction fees. And you want to ask yourself, am I eligible for a low fee deal if I'm a student? There are two banks recently that I noticed that they've got a cashback credit card, up to 12%, actually, one financial institution. Another one of our partners actually just launched a full comprehensive program for international students. So there are lots of banking programs out there where many financial institutions in Canada are trying to help you save money. They're trying to help you reduce fees. They also might have free banking for you as well. So I really want to encourage you to take a look at your bank account, take a look at your fees, and see what are some of the bank accounts that I could take advantage of as an international student. Here is a great tool. This is actually an account comparison tool that you can use. And if you want to message me after, I'm happy to share some of these resources and tools with you so that you can reference them and try them out yourself. Let's think about digital services. You know, there are many different digital services out there like mobile wallets and other applications. So I just want you to think about, you know, the risks and the reliability, the privacy and security of your financial information. And you want to make sure if you are using other digital services that are non-bank related, that you are testing this out for security, privacy, and reliability. They may be inexpensive alternatives to traditional banking services. I know that, you know, Interact or foreign exchange or sending money back home for your parents or for loved ones, or if you're receiving money, there might be other kinds of services that you're using for transferring funds. So just make sure that you are assessing this for privacy, security, and reliability, and that you actually assess what are the best ways for you to transfer money. So as I mentioned before, I really want to encourage you to audit your cell phone bill and options for students, just making sure that you are saving as much as you can. If you're calling back home, are there programs or plans or perks? And for those of you who are really savvy with your money, please feel free to share in the chat. Like, what's your favorite hack for cell phone? Thank you. We're just letting in a few more people. We've got 3 more people in the waiting room. So in the meantime, please share, like, do you have any money saving tips that you want to share on cell phone bills and how you're saving money for yourself? That would be great. Would love to hear your hacks. Just letting in a few more people. Wow. Okay. Don't eat out regularly. I love that. You switched competitors. Jagadish is very savvy. Awesome. Thank you for sharing all these tips. Please keep them coming. Another suggestion I have is bundling services pays a big time. So for example, if you bundle your phone bill, your internet, and your cable, you can definitely save money that way as well. How to save on food. Here are some tips on how to save money on food. Save when you shop for groceries. There's so many tips around grocery shopping. As I said, let's keep in touch. We'll be sending out other resources and money saving tips for you so you can take advantage of some of the plans and resources and perks. So for example, if you use Presto, if you search on the Presto website, you'll actually see lots of discounts and lots of coupons for Presto users. So there are lots of ways for you to find money saving tips that I just want to make sure that you're aware of. Do you have any other money saving tips that you want to share? Please put that in the chat. Yes, wonderful. Okay, so now I want to actually move topics. Looks like there's a lot of questions that I'm getting here on credit. Before I go into that, I just want to sort of say a few more things about being a really good savvy shopper. Is that you can look for different deals, but you also want to compare, like, do you really need something or do you really want something? So for example, your car, I do a lot of analysis on payments and debt ratios. And one of the things that I've noticed is that the payments on car payments are usually a huge luxury where people are having challenges managing. So could you be doing car sharing instead? Yeah. Okay, great. Wonderful. So let's talk about the latte factor.
Okay.
One of the things that I did when I graduated from school, I did graduate with a lot of student debt, but I was able to pay that off within 2 years. And one of my favorite books that I want to share with you is something called The Automatic Millionaire by David Bach. And one of the factors that I learned in that book was something called the latte factor. And we've all got the latte factor, right? Regardless of our income level. You know, we buy designer coffees, lunches in restaurants, impulse buying, the latest and greatest, you fill in the blank. So one of the ways I was able to pay off my debt in a very, very short period of time was I focused on reducing the latte factor in my life. And I really focused on specific debt reducing tactics that I learned through David Bach's book. So, you know, it's something that we learn, and we learn a lot of different tricks, and we learn by sharing and by reading. So if you haven't already followed David Bach, or you haven't heard about him, I highly recommend that you take a look at, you know, his work, and his research and his articles as well are very handy. There's also a number of podcasts for students and international students in particular. There's a great one by the Globe and Mail that you can listen to, amongst others as well. So if you're interested in money saving tips or learning how to pay down your debt, again, this is a topic that we can continue to talk about. So these are the questions I want to ask yourself before I move into debt and credit. You know, when does a want become a need? What motivates you to buy? Is it advertising? Is it friends? Is it trendy styles? Is it a rough day when you do those splurge purchases? And then does the urge to buy something die the next day? And does your purchases make you happy? And what needs are now collecting in the dust because your wants have gone before your needs? So I want you to start thinking about what can you actually learn to live without in the short term if you're trying to pay down your debt. Okay. Reducing impulse buying. Avoid unnecessary trips to the stores and shopping malls and online buying sites. Leave credit cards at home and use your debit card or your cash instead. Use cash to pay for purchases. So I hope this resonates with you in terms of helping you to become more of a savvy consumer. Now we're going to move into debt. But in the meantime, if there's something I haven't answered and you've got questions, please put it in the chat and I will follow up with you or follow up at the end of the session. Okay, let's move to credit and debt management. So I want to tell you, I'm going to introduce you to two different people before we go into credit and debt management. And I want you to think about yourself and what is your relationship to money. So I'd like to first introduce you to Arjun. I met Arjun a number of years ago, and Arjun grew up in a family that was very, 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 very savvy with their money and saved a lot of money. Arjun's family was very big, and their parents were farmers. So he grew up in an environment where money was very scarce. So his relationship with money was scarcity. And he grew up with that in his family, saving as more than spending. Then I want to introduce you to another individual that I had met. Her name was Natasha. Natasha grew up in a very different family. In her family, her parents were sales individuals and they made quite a lot of money. And they felt that, you know, experiences and spending money on travel and luxury was a really great way for them to give back to their children, give back to their family. So Natasha grew up in an environment where spending on luxurious experiences, spending on items, actually showed a lot about how they cared for their family. Imagine when Natasha and Arjun get together and get married. So you can imagine in this new home, what is their joint relationship to money? So before you go further in thinking about how am I going to budget, before you go further in thinking how am I going to save money, you know, how am I going to pay down my debt? One very important reflection that I'd like for you to try to think about is what is your personal relationship to money currently? And how would you like that to change? Okay. So I want you to think about the chicken and the egg, right? So when you are looking at buying eggs, you know, an egg, you use it one time. But if you have a chicken, you have endless supply of eggs. So maybe one way to think about money is, are you spending your money on a chicken or are you spending your money on an egg? And if you're trying to grow your wealth in Canada, I grew up in a family where, we learned that cash is king. But I learned as well in Canada that if cash is king, his queen is credit. And you need to be able to manage your credit wisely to build a positive credit rating, to be able to leverage credit in order to grow your wallet and to grow your prosperity in Canada. So I'm hoping that you will be curious about credit. And I'd just like to share with you a few things around credit. So number one in Canada, it's really important for you to know that the federal regulations say that credit card companies have to ask your permission to raise your credit limit. So maybe take a look at your credit limits right now. Pull out your credit card statement, take a look at the balance, the interest rate, and your payments as well. One tip that I'd really like you to think about is using your credit cards wisely. Okay. When I first got my credit, I still have the same credit card I had when I was in university. I didn't know anything about using a credit card. I would use my credit card for everything, even, very, very small purchases, right? But what you want to think about is, when do I actually need to use my credit card? And also taking a look at some of the perks and bonuses. If you spend money a lot in Walmart, there's a Walmart points card, for example. When you want to travel and you want to go back home, if you consolidate all your cards into a points card for travel, you could actually be using your credit card smart, but then paying it off and accumulating points to help you travel back home. Okay. So these are some of the tips I have here in using credit cards very wisely. So here's a credit card quiz. Paying your credit card bill just a couple days after the due date won't affect your credit report. True or false? Can you please put it in the chat? Excellent. Yes, Akusa, it is false. On your credit card payment due date, they give you 21 days of a grace period, and then there's a due date. So what you want to do is make sure that you are managing your credit wisely and paying off your credit by the due date. There are some grace periods, which I can talk to you about later if someone is really interested to learn more about this. Okay, wonderful. Just going to close the chat there. Here's another one that I wanted you to think about. Last month, your credit card balance was zero. This month, your statement shows that you made a $500 purchase. If you pay off the $400 by the due date, you will be charged interest only on the $100 left to pay. True or false? Excellent. Tamirez, you're right. It is true. Anne-Marie, you're right. It is true. You guys are on the ball. Awesome. Great. Here's another one. If you use your credit card to take money out as cash advance, you don't have to pay the interest on the amount you've withdrawn, as long as you pay your credit card bill in the full by the due date on your statement. True or false? Don't be shy. We're learning together. So is this true or false? Think about it. Let's get these answers coming in. Yes, Salwa. Thank you. Yes, correct. It's false. And the reason this one is false is because when you take a cash advance from your credit card, it's charged differently than when you make a credit card purchase. Cash advances interest starts accruing immediately from the day that you withdraw it as a cash advance on your credit. Okay. Wonderful. Great. So you guys are doing awesome. I am just going back to my slides here. Great. Okay, credit cards. Without a good credit history, tell me which one you think is right. Your bank may charge you a highest interest rate on the personal loan for a car or house. Your bank may refuse to give you a loan. You might not be able to get a lease on an apartment. Which one is correct? 1 and 2 only, or all of the above? I'm going to let you guys answer that in the chat and think about that one. Okay, so pick the right answer here. Choose a credit card that suits your needs and how you will use the card. Okay. So in addition to the interest rate, I want you to consider the annual fees or other user fees, the real value of any points or benefits offered. Okay. So the same website that I mentioned before, they have a credit card comparison tool, and it helps you to choose the best credit card for your lifestyle currently. So maybe right now you want to travel, right? Maybe you want to save money on grocery shopping. So you need to think about, what are my biggest needs right now and how do I leverage my points or my credit card to help me get free groceries or to help me get a free trip, okay? Here are some tips as well to help you, okay? Pay the balance in full at the end of each month. If you can't pay it in full, pay as much as you can. Don't make only the minimum payment. And if you always carry a balance, get a low rate card. So I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but you can actually call up the bank. They all have low interest credit cards. You don't have to pay 22 to 24 to 28% or more. They usually have a low interest credit card. So if you're finding it difficult to pay down your credit cards, it might be worth it to pay a small annual fee, but you'll save money on a lower interest rate. Okay. Um, the last one that's coming very, very popular right now is the transfer the balance to a line of credit with a lower rate, okay? And as I said, pay a few days before the due date to make sure that your credit rating and that you're managing your credit wisely, and also your balances as well as building a good credit history in Canada. For newcomers to Canada, international students, as I mentioned, I know a lot of the community that we grew up in the Caribbean. I'm half actually Trinidadian and half Italian. And in our community, cash was everything. They used to save their cash in the mattress or save it in different parts in the house. But the challenge with that is that if you don't use or build your credit, you won't be able to leverage credit in the future when you want to make bigger purchases. So you want to be wise with your credit, but you need at least two revolving credit cards or two revolving cards or credit options in the future if you're looking to buy a home in Canada or to purchase investment properties in the future as well. So there is a really important reason of why you do want to establish a positive credit score in Canada. Okay. Now let's talk about the other side of the equation, making money. So as students and international students, newcomers to Canada, there is free money available that goes unclaimed every year. Again, I would love to hear from you in the chat if you'd like to share with some of your colleagues here in the room, in our virtual room. What are some great scholarships or employers or communities where you found bursaries and scholarships? I've given you a link here on EduCanada scholarships. You can actually search within the EduCanada scholarship link for international student scholarships that are available for you. Also, each designated learning institution, so universities and colleges that are public, all offer bursaries and scholarships and financial aid. So please make sure you're reaching out to your financial services office, your financial aid office, to take advantage and to get their guidance in helping you through each semester if you're finding it difficult to pay for your fixed and your variable expenses. And then finally, here's another example. I chose Humber here. They've got a really great site on managing your finance scholarships and awards. So just want to encourage you to do your research and find that free money, okay? If you do have a student loan, here are some tips for you to pay your student loan down. Okay. And as I mentioned, as we do more financial literacy sessions, we will get more advanced. I'm happy to share with you, and we will be bringing in speakers that will be able to talk to you a little bit about qualifying for your first mortgage, how to negotiate a car loan, how do you apply for a line of credit, being smart with your overdraft protection. I also want you to be aware of not getting caught into payday loans, okay? Here's an example of what happens when you take a $300 payday loan and the cost and interest to you over 14 days. Okay, this is you basically throwing money in the garbage, and you're wasting the opportunity for yourself to build back your credit and pay down your interest. Okay. So tips for managing. Here are some 3 top tips. Shopping around, we talked about that. Don't accept the first offer. Compare interest rates. Keep within your budget and pay back more and more often. Additional payments means that you'll pay it off sooner and you'll reduce the interest that's on your debt. Okay. I'm going to give you just a few comments around the credit report. I'm getting a lot of questions around credit in Canada. How do I establish my Canada? How do I establish my credit in Canada? So here's a summary of your credit history and other financial information that's really important. Your credit report in Canada, there are two main credit reporting agencies. One is TransUnion and one is Equifax. And what it does, it's almost like your report card, but it's your financial payment report card. It includes past lenders. It includes companies that collect, assess, and share data. And you can also get a credit report for free. You can order it online by mail or in person. You can also download it on Credit Karma or Borrowell just to have an idea of what's on my credit. And I also encourage you to do that. It doesn't hurt your credit score. You could do it for free, but you can also see and check what is on my credit to make sure no one is using your name or your credit inadvertently. Okay. Your credit score, now it's different than a transcript or academic score, but there is a credit score. And the scoring system gives numbers between 300 to 900. The higher the score, the lower the risk for the financial institution and the better rates that you could potentially be getting, okay? Lenders use credit scores to decide whether to lend you money, and it also impacts the interest rate that they're going to charge you for credit. So it is in your interest to be smart with managing your money and improving your credit score. I would also say, once you reach over 700, that's great. I wouldn't get too worried about anything, even higher than 700. 780 is also a really good mark to go to, but you don't need to gear to 900. I know a lot of you are going to top universities and colleges in Canada, and you want to get that A. This is where your credit score is different. Once you reach over a certain amount, I would say that you've got good credit and, you can just keep managing your credit and maybe leveraging your credit. Remember I mentioned about, are you spending your money on a chicken or are you only spending money on an egg, right? So for example, when you purchase a car, if you're using it for luxury and driving, then that would be mainly the egg. It has to get you around. But if you use that car for car sharing purposes, or you shared that car for revenue, then that car, that same purchase is actually now a chicken. It's earning you income. So just remember, when you're spending money, sometimes it's not a bad decision to make an investment if it's earning you back money. So just be cognizant of the difference here. So if you already have a good credit score, then, don't be afraid to learn how to invest and how to take smart investment decisions, okay? You can access your credit score, as I said, from the two credit bureaus, Equifax or TransUnion. If you live in Quebec, you can also access your credit score from TransUnion online for free. Okay. As I said, I really want to encourage you, maybe as an action for yourself, please put in your journal, your financial journal. So you have your study journal from today. I want you to start your financial literacy journal for yourself. You can either email yourself with the subject line, you can have paper and pen, you can do this online, there's lots of apps, but I really want you to pull your credit within the next 30 days. And I'd like to make sure that you're checking it for identity theft, you know your credit score, and you create a plan for yourself so that you have a healthy relationship with your money, okay? True or false? If you've ever applied for several credit cards or other forms of credit within a short period of time, this could have a negative impact on your credit score. True or false? Okay, let's see those answers in the chat. Excellent. Excellent. Correct, Edith, you're right, true. So one of the things that affects your credit score, there are multiple things that affect your credit score, but if you're applying to too many if you're shopping around for a rate, for example, it's a great idea, to shop around. However, if you're applying to multiple banks, that means they're going to be pulling multiple times your credit, which will impact your credit score. One of the tips that I can offer you is to use a mortgage broker or a mortgage agent or somebody who's an insurance broker, for example, when you're shopping around for insurance, because once they pull your credit bureau once, they can shop around for you and advise you and help you to find the best rates, okay? So just something to be cognizant of. Which one of the following does not affect your credit score? So look at 1 to 5 and feel free if you feel comfortable. As I said, you're not getting a grade for this. So 1 to 5, which one does not affect your credit score? So your payment history, whether you have ever missed a debt payment, any collection of bankruptcy that has been recorded against you, your history of repaying informal loans from family or friends. Back home, where I came when I grew up, we used to have a family savings, and it used to be called susu, and it was a family or friends savings. And we would save up every week, and then at the end of the week, someone else would collect the savings. I don't know if anyone else here has a different back home or in your culture, but a history of repaying informal loans such as a susu. Any outstanding debts that you have, your account history, how long have you had credit, and the type of credit you have. So which one of the following does not affect your credit score? I'm going to take this up in my follow-up notes. So I'm going to see who has been listening to the session. Thank you so much for your comment. This is great. Okay, so checking. We talked a little bit about this. When you're checking your credit score, you're checking your credit, you want to review for errors or accounts that are not yours. Contact the credit bureau to report any errors, and you can request a correction. Okay, you can request a correction. And here are some final tips. Always make your payments on time. Use your credit wisely. Do not go over your credit limit. I just worked with a client, for example, that went over their credit limit when they were a student, and it impacted them in the future when they were looking to purchase a house, as well as gym memberships. Unfortunately, gym memberships that you may have taken and not paid will go onto your credit as well, depending on that gym. So just be very, very smart about your debts, making sure you don't go over your credit limit and you pay off anything that you owe. And yes, building a longer credit history, it will help you. So I've kept my first credit card that I got when I was in university, believe it or not, it actually to my advantage, making sure that I pay that off every month. Okay. And then finally, if you do want to shop around or you do need help, don't make a lot of credit applications at once or credit checks. Be very smart and organize yourself when you're making those credit checks. Okay. These are some more tips that we talked about. And finally, I just wanted to give you my most important tips on your credit score. As I said, as newcomers to Canada or international students, these are tips and information that you may not be aware of, but this is how you can actually boost your credit score. And if you need some assistance in boosting your credit score and you have follow-up questions, feel free to reach out to me. Feel free to reach out to us on Devant with your questions. And in our future financial literacy sessions, we'll make sure to cover that for you. Okay. So I'm going to stop here. I see a lot of questions right now in the chat, and I'm going to answer some of those. So I'm going to give you a chance to please put your questions in the chat. You can also unmute yourself. If you have a question for me, you can introduce yourself and feel free to ask your question. I'm happy to answer, take the rest of the time right now to answer any of your questions. We've got 15 minutes left.
Hi, good evening again. Is it possible for you to show me the second to last slide again, please?
The second to last slide,
Yes,
Anne-Marie, the tips on your credit score, Anne-Marie?
Yes, I think so. Let's
Okay,
see.
1 second. Yep, 1 second. I'll go back to that one.
Yes, this one. Yeah.
There you go. I see
Thank
someone's
you.
asking me. You're welcome, Anne-Marie. Thank you for your question. Thanks for joining. I see someone's asking me about cryptocurrencies. I am not an expert in cryptocurrencies, so I'm not the best person to answer that question on. But that's maybe something that in our future financial literacy sessions, I can bring someone to talk about digital currencies. Thank you so much for that question. Okay, so I'm just reading the questions. Some great questions. Okay, so what is the difference between a debit card and a credit card? Thank you so much for that question, Holiness. I love that question. So there's a very big difference. A credit card is a limit that you've been approved on, which is the money that is not yours. You're borrowing it from the bank, and they would charge you an interest rate on that credit card. Versus a debit card, it's money that you're withdrawing from the bank account. I hope that answers your question. Thank you so much, Holiness. So just to recap, when you have a bank account with cash in the bank account and you use a debit card, you're withdrawing the money from the bank using your debit card. So that's money that you already have in the bank versus a credit card, which is a credit card is an approved limit of money that is not yours. Okay. Okay, thank you so much for that question. Augustina, what does a statement balance mean in a credit card? So when you charge money on your credit card, the money that you're owing is the statement balance up until the end date of that credit card. Okay. Sometimes when you get your credit card statement next month, you're wondering, well, I paid an X amount. Why do I still have, it's not adding up for me? Sometimes you've charged money on your credit card, but it hasn't shown yet. So if you want to know what your current balance is, up to that day, it's best to call the number on the back of the credit card to find out what is the actual balance. Okay. Just reading through the question. Okay, so there is a question. Thank you, Tony. So there's no penalty, meaning a reduction in your credit score if one applies for a credit score by Equifax or similar agencies. No. So you can actually request your own credit report with no penalty. It's free. You can download that. You can request that. You can also do that on Borrowell or Credit Karma, and you can actually see what your credit score is, and it doesn't impact you. Okay. Another person asked, when's the next financial literacy session? We will be posting these at least once a quarter on the Devant website under our events for you to register and follow up with. I'd love to get your feedback on what topics you're interested in. It looks like there's some questions or quite a few questions on investments, what types of investments that we're interested in. So maybe I'm going to suggest to our team that saving and investing could be another topic of interest. Okay, so we've got a few more minutes. I'm just going to read through the questions. Give me a second to see what are some other quick questions that I can answer for you. Wow, this is a really great question, Julio. So Julio's asking, the credit history we built outside of Canada, will this be taken into consideration or our credit history in Canada starts from scratch? Does anyone want to take a stab at answering that question? What do you think? Just in light of timing, I'm going to answer that for you. So when you come to Canada, you will start to build your credit history with inquiries for your cell phone, for credit cards, for loans, etc. But for example, if you lived in the US, you have a US credit bureau report that's separate to the credit report that you have in Canada, unless there was information sharing for the products that you purchased, okay, or that you borrowed on, okay? There could be some special circumstances. Again, it depends on what your debt is and how they registered it on the credit bureaus. Sometimes when we've got international applicants, we can request, as I said, the US credit report, or we could ask for international reports, but most countries do not share information across borders. There are only special circumstances that might do that. So I just want to take this time to thank you all so much for joining today. It was great to see your questions, your interaction. I hope that this was useful in helping you understand the financial basics and financial literacy in building your credit, understanding debt, understanding how to save some money, and how to move you forward on your financial goals. So at this time, I'm just going to put a quick poll for you. I'd love your feedback. And as I said, I'm going to save the chat and follow up with you. So if you have follow-up questions or you would like to share some feedback on our future sessions, please feel free to email me. I'll put my email in the chat, and you can also email us at the Devant info line as well. So just give me a moment. I'm just going to launch our poll. Wanted to wish you guys all the best. Thank you so much for joining. We will have a follow-up session on financial literacy where we will be bringing in some banks as well as some financial experts, because it looks like there's quite a few questions on saving and investing that I'm seeing here. So thank you all so much for joining. Please feel free to stay in touch. As I said, I'm going to launch the poll now. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much. Have a nice evening. Bye.
You're welcome. Wow, 100% yes, would recommend to a friend. Thank you guys so much for answering the poll. Wish you all the best in your financial freedom, financial literacy, and let's stay in touch, okay? Bye, everyone.